Hey, hello. It's been a while to everyone might be listening out there. So I wanted to look through this video, always very interesting. Look at the taxes that are being done here. So this is about the killing of the United Health CEO. I don't remember his name. And yeah, so let's start listening what Piers Morgan says.
Me confront that, first off, which is, it shouldn't need to be confronted. It's disgusting. If you celebrate the death of an executive from a company whose policies you don't agree with, you're disgusting. You're inhumane. If you lack any empathy and are proud of that, or you feel joyful, you are inhumane. It is wrong. I don't care who it is, what political divide they come from, what the policies are. You don't execute people in the street, and you don't get celebrated when you do that.
I agree.
But secondly, Clay, I would say this. This extraordinary phenomenon of so many liberal women.
Okay, so this is very interesting. So first of all, he does some framing. So he says, oh, this is just a murder of some random guy, which is really not true. No, the whole point that this guy, the CEO, is at the end of the day is a murderer, and I think that's where the conversation is people struggle to really frame, change the frame of the conversation for what he has initially said, because that's what we have been conditioned to consider socially. So he says, this is a normal person, basically, yeah, just a CEO of some company, and he gets murdered, and we're celebrating and discussing. Sure, I mean, if the guy was making shoes or, I don't know, dog food or really most things that don't cause the death of tens of thousands of people every year, that would be true, and not only death, but the suffering of lots of more people, that would be true, but he's not, no? So that's the framing he said. Then they started using this argument, and so he already set the frame. It's a normal guy, and if you don't feel empathy for them, you don't feel bad about it, then you're a monster yourself. No, but of course it's a very subtle way of doing it. He's not telling them directly on their faces because he's talking to them, but he set the frame. And then he talks about the women, and let's listen to this.
About the hot assassin, as if somehow the fact that he was good looking in some way is the most important aspect of this.
Hot assassin.
So this is such a sexist comment. I'm not particularly a person that is into feminism or anything like that, but it's such a sexist comment. So what if people think this hot? Like, don't women have the right to think that whoever might be hot or not? I mean, that's just like, yeah, so somehow because you agree with him, because you somehow think what you did is not as terrible as had to kill a normal person, but because you think it's hot, somehow you are just diminishing women. And I don't know how women are okay with this argument, and the woman, I don't remember her name, the black woman here, didn't respond to it. Like, I will refuse to comment on that because it's just a sexist comment made to diminish the other people who don't see this murder as such a horrendous act. And the reason why this shouldn't be this way is because of who this person represents at the end of the day. I mean, I don't justify murder. At the end of the day, murder is murder, but who you murder matter, if you had gone back kill Hitler, I don't think anybody would have been sad about it. Should you feel empathy with it? Of course, this guy was not Hitler, CEO was not Hitler, but he was responsible for a lot of death. We should call it as it is. He should be a murderer. He is a murderer. He was a mass murderer. And I think that's where this video falls short. And the commenters, the left leaning, let's call them this way, participants don't manage to try to reset the conversation towards this is not about whether the guy committed a horrible act, Luigi, but if the CEO was a murderer or not, because that changes a lot of the frame. Feeling empathy for a murder is not something easy. Feeling empathy for a random CEO who had a family and was very nice and was simply providing value to the community, that's easy, especially since we have been conditioned in our society to think that somehow CEOs are better people. Let's keep listening.
To me, Piers, that this would take off as it has is utterly ridiculous. But look, I mean, this was a cold-blooded murder that we were all able to watch take place on the video monitors in Midtown Manhattan. And the thing I would point out is two things that usually happen. One, I do think there's a deeper story here. This is a incredibly privileged, it appears to be alleged, but seems like he is the killer based on all the evidence. He went to a $40,000 a year high school. He has double degrees from an Ivy League institution. He has all the advantages and privileges that a rich kid in America would have. And he killed an executive who was the son of lower middle class, it appears, parents, who worked his way up based on his own individual merit and accolades. And so you have this incredible, if you want to talk about white privilege, this assassin is maybe the definition of white privilege. And he also used a gun. And usually anytime we have a shooting like this, almost immediately.
So, and it's just fantastic how they change the conversation and use every argument they can to destroy the other side. And without any, any shred of moral consistency, I will call it. So the idea that somehow now, because you have privilege, somehow you have, what did this guy have privilege? He has a very high IQ, but somehow because you're privileged, then is you are more somehow morally justified. Sorry. You are have committed worse of an act, and we should not understand your actions. It's just incredible, especially for somebody who will easily defend, the opposite side when it's convenient. I personally think that this idea of white privilege, I mean, you do have privilege if you are white, but using that as a moral justification is always falls short. And whatever you use on whichever side, it just takes away the fact that the person, everybody has a humanity, whether you had more privilege or not privilege, that does not mean to be mistreated. It's the same exact process, whether I mistreat you because you had more before, whether I mistreat you because you had less before, whether I mistreat you because you look in a certain way, or whether even I treat you better because you look in some other way. They are all signs of the same lack of, I think, like, I don't know how to call it, some basic, not basic humanity, but like a certain form of racism or the, intrinsic human tendency to discrimination. Sorry, if you treat people differently, then you discriminate them. And in a way, they're using it to, put this CEO again on the moral high ground. And taking away the fact that he was a serial murderer, like his actions led to the death of lots of people.
Control. It appears this may have been a gun that he created using some sort of 3D creation, that is some sort of advanced technology. And we don't hear anything about gun control, and we don't hear anything about white privilege. And so in addition to the fact that a lot of crazy, broken-brained left-wing women like Taylor Lorenz can't find any man, so they decide to get all turned on by assassins, it's I think, evidence of how the left-wing's brain is.
I don't think any women on the left would have gone public and talked about what a hot assassin he was. Do you?
I frankly don't know that that's true, and I also think we can't erase how many men are also thirsting, frankly, after the claims adjuster, or as you have been describing him, the hot assassin, Luigi Mangione. But I think the real point is that both sides of the establishment political aisle are desperate to make this a conversation about something other than the fact that we have perhaps the most perverse healthcare system, or insurance system is a more accurate way to put it, compared to every other similarly wealthy country in the world. The reason you're seeing this outrage, and sometimes kind of...
and she did that deal here, no? She calls a little bit out on his bullshit and try to change the conversation away from this. So he had asked her, well, had another murderer kill, been on the other side of the discourse, like had killed some innocent guy, would they ever say he's a hot guy? And she kind of reflected it, but I think it would have been really useful to say, why are we talking about this? This is irrelevant. People can think whatever they want, and this is sexist. But anyway, so she tried to focus more on the injustice, yet she often misses the opportunity to really say clearly this is a murder.
The shooter is exactly because 68,000 people every year in the United States of America die because people like Brian Thompson, who run companies like UnitedHealth, deny insurance claims that could have saved the lives of their loved ones. And while there were a lot of words spent talking about the real fear of the people on the subway who had encountered Jordan Neely, it's important to note that Jordan Neely hadn't physically engaged with anybody on the subway.
Well, I'm going to come to Jordan, just to be clear. I'm going to come to... Let's separate the two stories, though.
That was just an aside. So so many words, passions, empathy was directed in that direction. But Brian Thompson's actual crimes of having a direct connection to mass death and suffering for tens of thousands of Americans on a yearly basis,
Well, hang on, you said
I think
crimes.
is going under-examined.
Okay, you said crimes. What was the crime?
Unfortunately, the United States, our legal system is designed.
And this is also something incredible. So yeah, I don't know if you ever heard Piers Morgan when he talks about Gaza. Sometimes he always, like, this preventive action of the IDF, basically always Israel always under threat, and so people get killed, and that's okay, So what was the crime of these people? So it's always, I think that's the insidiousness of the current situation in which we live, in which we have a democratic system, which ideal people set up the rules, but at the end of the day, the rules can be manipulated. So even if people have some level of power, that power is not meaningful enough. No, sure, as a CEO, you don't have a crime, but I mean, she responds to that. That doesn't mean that you should not have such a crime. This should not be a crime. And why we don't have a crime? Because our system sucks, and that's where people then are led to commit. I don't want to say the word commit. I don't like it so much, but to do acts that will seem otherwise extreme in moral norms. And let's listen what he says.
Power who enrich themselves, who don't make denying people's health care that results in mass death.
Yeah, but you called it a crime, though. You called it a crime, but it wasn't a crime. He wasn't a convicted criminal.
I would define it colloquially as a crime, and the fact that Luigi allegedly took matters into his own hands is because no political system or legal system in the United States of America has been willing to step up.
Actually, we don't even know that, do we?
The mass
It seems
murder
to me
that's been executed on the part of the American healthcare system.
I would say, look, we don't know really enough about this guy yet. It looks to me like he's a bit of a narcissist.
What do you mean?
I think he was a narcissist. I think that he was clearly unhinged. I'm not sure that he's the great Robin Hood. Hang on.
Which guy? I'm sorry.
Hang on. Luigi, the shooter,
or,
right?
Brian Thompson.
It's nice. He says, who are you talking about? No, who's the narcissist here for real?
One who shot Brian Thompson, Luigi, right? I'm just not sure that he's this great, heroic guy standing up against the healthcare system. I suspect
I'm not talking about that. This isn't about Luigi, who may or may not, he's been arrested, he's been charged. We may or may not know that he's the actual shooter. I'm talking about the public reaction to Brian Thompson's death.
No, I understand
we
that.
do know about Brian Thompson.
I understand that.
We know about UnitedHealth, and that's the root of the discontent. That's the root of the public outcry. Luigi is just a vessel through which people are expressing their deep frustrations with the American healthcare system. So the question is, if you don't want murders like this to be happening, assassinations to be happening like this in the street, I'm someone who does not believe in the death penalty and don't condone these kinds of vigilante instances of violence in either case. But if you want to get to the root of why people are so deeply unhappy, you have to, it resonates so deeply with people that this has happened, you have to get to the root of why there is this deep well of tragedy, despair, and outrage in the United States of America. And that has to do with what Brian Thompson has chosen to do with companies like UnitedHealth Care to the American people.
But just to be clear, before I go to Natalie to respond to that, do you feel any empathy for Brian Thompson and his family?
I have infinite empathy for any individual as a person in their personal capacity, as well as the CEO of UnitedHealth Care. I'm afraid I'm with the overwhelming majority, bipartisan majority of the American people who say, I'm saving my empathy for people who are much more vulnerable and have caused a lot of harm.
So to be clear, you don't have any empathy for him after he was executed?
I personally don't.
Right, okay, well, at least you're honest. Let me go to Natalie Winters. I mean, I find this...
and this is, I think, my mistake there. And it was a trap that he set. And that's I think, very often we all want to say what we are asked to, but we should really ask questions, because she framed me before who he was. For her, in her eyes, although she doesn't say that, obviously, this is a murderer. No? So something I will say is like, sorry, will you have empathy for a mass murderer? You say, yeah, but he's okay, but from my perspective, this is a mass murderer. How can you ask me that? So we can argue here whether he's a mass murderer. No, you can try to convince the opposite, but do you think that if you could really ask me if I have empathy for a mass murderer being killed and being stopped from executing more of these deaths? After this happened, some other insurance was gonna even deny even more claims, and they relaxed on that. No? So has the act of one person actually potentially saved life? Even if this act is horrible, but at the end of the day, we do have a life math. No? If this person act, I think I'm going and attach it, but we ask, okay, will you have empathy for a murder? And yeah, focus always, I say myself, on one topic, and then that changes, because then the question is not whether you have empathy or not. It's very easy to make absolute judgment calls, and that's what he's doing on that. But if you put, this the question into something that's more convenient for you, something that frames the guy into the optics that you want, then he wouldn't be able to, answer so clearly, because you're not saying you don't have empathy for them, for the dead guy. You are saying you don't have empathy for a murderer, which is very reasonable instead.
It's supposed to be the party that cares so much. All of them have their Be Kind hashtags. They're the caring ones, the kind ones, and they can't even bring it in their hearts to say they find a shred of empathy for a man who's just been executed, who's the father of children, the husband of a loving wife, and so on. I find that just staggering, that you can't, on a human level, have empathy for the murder of someone, but also make your point about the system in which he was an executive. What's your response?
And it's interesting that I talk about, the left and how it should be always caring about people, but that's just not true. The left's not about caring about everybody, irrelevant of who they are. This idea, I think, as the left is about caring for the overwhelming amount of people. Of course, I think everyone on the left is that respects life or would like to see less suffering for everybody, no matter who you are. But this idea is how then you just need to conveniently care, about anyone, even if that person continuously does harm to others, is just absurd and is such a manipulation of reality.
Absolutely shocking. And look, what it gets to the core of is the continued dehumanization of people, because in the class family went to state schools,
healthcare systems, they would go to these lengths, that people who are relatively affluent still find themselves in medical bankruptcy, as you so rightly pointed out earlier, Piers Morgan, that 50% of families that have a cancer diagnosis in their family in the United States of America go bankrupt. That is where the moral outrage should lie. But
Listen, don't get me wrong. Listen, I think...
Peers who have wealthy, affluent
listen,
health.
Brianna.
Let's look at this. Pierre Morgan also is...
find themselves in medical bankruptcy, as you so rightly pointed out earlier, Piers Morgan, that 50% of families that have a cancer diagnosis in their family in the United States of America go bankrupt. That is where the moral outrage should lie. But
listen, don't get me wrong. Listen, I think...
Peers who have wealthy, affluent health.
Brianna,
the focus seems to be on the family of the millionaire and not on the families of the people who have been terrorized by the healthcare system.
You made your point. Listen, I'm in London at the moment. In the UK, we have the National Health Service. It's free healthcare for all. So I find the whole system in America completely baffling, that a country of your size and power and economic muscle can't have a better system where people don't fall through the cracks in such large numbers. I completely agree. But that is a separate issue to the execution of someone in the street. Clay, I can see you were rolling your eyes there.
It's not a separate issue.
Well, let me bring Clay in.
It is a separate. Piers, I'm in Israel right now.
Okay, and then I don't care about it. She says that it's not a separate issue. You cannot separate, and this is what everybody felt a little bit. I think other people have made this argument a bit better. It is not a separate issue, and people feel that this guy the other day is a mass murderer. Maybe there's not a law to do that, but how many people have died because of his action? And all these parents, husbands, brothers, sisters, children of people who have died because of them, whose life have been destroyed, they see him as a murderer. And no wonder they're happy, because such a common occurrence in the United States, although I don't experience that specific system myself. So yeah, this is just this analysis I want to make, because it was just in my head. Anyway, if you any incredible chance you got here, thanks for listening and have fun.